I typically don't wear hats, but I wanted to show you the cool things Adobe sent me. It's a nice Adobe hat here. You can see it's a very simplistic design. They sent me actually a pretty cool mug as well with all the new logos here. So thank you very much, Adobe, for sending over this swag pack. And maybe I will be wearing a hat more frequently now. Thank you so much. As you may or may not know, we do have an active challenge on the CG Lounge Discord server. We are doing a DeLorean project, and I want to show you a few techniques I applied to my version of the vehicle. I want to show you a few advanced techniques using anchor points and using matte brush finishes and using your curvature maps to control your height maps of your vehicle. I also want to thank Tourbox for sending me over the Tourbox NEO controller, which is designed for painters and artists to be more efficient with their workflows. This is how it looks. You can see the scale. It's very small, but it's packed with lots of features and nice controls to ease up your workflow. More on that once we get started with the tutorial. So this here is my completed DeLorean textured version. You will see there are several techniques I applied on the tires here to get this nice protruding effect here on the text. We got some cleanup around the text, which results in a nice shiny finish. And then obviously we have this rubber look all over. We do have a custom material for these wires. You will see that the surface is not straight. It's actually quite bumpy and broken up. And then we also have towards the edges, we have a little bit of a bump kind of thing happening. And I will be showing you in detail how to create that. And if you're missing the basic workflows, I do have several other videos showcasing how I'm doing certain things. So make sure to check out my previous videos as well. So now let's jump into the material of the tire. So let me just make sure I select that single set, and then I'm isolating that just to visualize only this texture set to work on this. You'll see I have several groupings here. I always do that. I start with a group and I mask it off so I know what I'm working on. You can see the tires are isolated with a mask, so are the cables, and so are the metal paints. So everything is essentially isolated. And this allows me to work in a very efficient manner, and I like to do that all the time. I'm starting out with a very basic material. I call this rubber, and I'm just applying a roughness breakup here. We're using a simple texture, which I put into the roughness only. You will see I only have the roughness enabled here on the right, and this is just a simple texture map applied to this. If I visualize it here, you will see this is my roughness map. And I just drop that in. Using the levels here, I can freely adjust it as I want. So before the levels, this is very specky, very reflective. So then I'm applying the roughness levels. Make sure this is affecting roughness channel. And then I can freely adjust it as I want it to look like. And this is something I typically do for all my initial materials. Next up, I do have the text. I essentially projected this on using a texture projection. So at the bottom here, I have my initial paint layer. You can see I can paint over that. But technically what I did, I went to the projection brush here and I projected the original base reference I had for this DeLorean car. So yeah, I just dropped in my reference image here. I zoomed it in and I placed it around the tire, and I just projected the text into my alpha channel. So quite straightforward. I did that. I flipped the texture map to get the reverse angle as well. So this is essentially how it was done. You can see this is now my raw projection. Then I did some cleanup work around it. And the cool thing I did then is using warp, which just breaks up the texture. You can see without the warp, it's very clean and straight. So the warp is just breaking up the edge. It's just essentially a generator you create, add a filter, and then you just find the warp and play around with the values. Then with the levels, I just made sure that it's not too bright. Again, I'm adjusting the roughness. And then what I did towards the end, I created this anchor point. And this is quite important because I want to use that to clean up around it. So the anchor point is essentially the result of this. And this is just stored in this text mask anchor point. And on top of that, what I did then, I just used this in the next, and I think in the clean one here. Let me just bring that up. So this is what's happening in the clean, lower roughness, black color. And then I'm just blending it in using some kind of alpha. And you will see at the bottom here, I'm using a fill, but the fill is actually bringing in the previous anchor point. If I highlight it, you will see that it's going to the text at the bottom. So I'm just essentially doing a copy reference of my previous alpha. Then I'm blurring this, adding levels to extend to make it a little bit wider. Blur slope to break up the look like this, just to really add some breakup. And then I'm bringing it back again the same anchor point we used before to stance out the text. So I'm inverting this and stancing it back in. And this will not touch the text itself, but only the surrounding areas. And this is quite easily done by like that. On top of that, I added a dust layer, which is then adding this finer detail. So if I go back to my main image here, you will see that it fits in quite nicely with the rest of the vehicle. And you might be wondering how I'm actually controlling my substance controls and layers and everything. I do actually use a secondary hardware piece, which is called a Tourbox NEO. It's like a secondary control unit for next to your keyboard, and I'm using this super often. It's very nice to work because you can assign all these controls to your shortcuts and be very efficient in all other applications. So I'm using this for Substance Painter, for Maya, for Premiere, for Photoshop, for Lightroom. It's very nice, and I can show you this is exactly how you can map certain controls. And this is my Substance Painter presets here. You can control your knobs and sliders with different parameters. And for instance, if I want to do this isolate, I'm just hitting my hotkeys here, and this is quickly isolating this. And you can use the knob to use undo quite easily. That's what I use quite often as well. And again, you can show your masks. I just have hotkeys, as you can see, for everything. So I'm very fast in just going through my menu items and displaying things. And this is how the console looks like. This is how you set up these shortcuts. So this is my Painter panel here, and you have all these different options to connect certain values to it. And then you have your global ones, which is throughout the system. You have Windows specific ones. You can see I've got Premiere specific ones, Houdini specific ones. So it's super nice. You can, and it automatically switches to the right applications once you load them up, and once you switch focus to them, it switches the profiles. I have a few nice affiliate links below if you want to check it out. It's a very nice product. You will get a nice discount if you click the links below. So make sure to check it out. It's called Tourbox NEO. So now let's continue with our car cable material here. So next up, we have this cables here, and I didn't really want to go in manually and select one and fill the color for it. So I actually have a pretty nice setup for this. Initially, I'm just creating this plastic material, which we have a similar one on the tires, and this is just applied throughout the cables. So the next thing what I wanted to do is find a nice way to actually colorize them using some kind of procedural way. So if I create a new material here on the top, you can see now this is applied to the cables. All I want to do now is make sure we just work on the color, and then in the base color, I'm just typing in here gradient like that. And this is now expecting some kind of input to drive these base colors. So because I do have my ID map, which is a color per object or per material, I will use that instead. So I'm just using this to drop that into my image inputs. And you can already see by just dropping that in, you will see that we get this kind of range in colors. It's not just one color, it's now different colors per gradient essentially. So all I got to do now is pick the colors I want. So let's say we want to go for red here. Then we want to go for, let's say we go a different hue, maybe pick a yellow. And then for color 3, we maybe stick with a black or so. So let's just go down here. All right, so currently you can specify the ranges. So you want to adjust the color positions until you get the colors you need, because you need to offset the gradient somehow to get the exact color matches. And this is what I did with the previous material. I just played around with the colors, played around with the gradients and the positions, and then in the end I got this. You can see now this is my setup. I picked these 3 colors and I played around with the positions to get exactly that look. So it's a very nice way based on input maps. You can use dirt maps, you can use grunge maps, or you can use your baked mesh, which I just used for this one, to pick certain colors for that specific range. Before we jump into the car body material, I first want to show you how I set up the windscreens. So I started out with this fill layer here, and I made sure that I'm setting all the parameters. So no base color, it's totally black, no height, roughness to black, metallic to black, and nothing has really changed. I'm just overriding the previous materials completely. And then I'm creating a fill layer, which is just affecting the roughness. And similar to the tires, I'm just creating a grunge on top of this. You will see that you get these little dust specks all over the place. And it's just a nice way to dirty up your windscreens. Sometimes the effect is too strong, so you just need to dial it back down. And you can quite easily just do that if you go to the roughness here and just dial it back down. You will see that it's not so strong once you, let me find a nice reflection angle, pull it back in or out as you see fit. And I just want to have it a little bit. What I always think adds a nice touch is if you add these windscreen wiper trails. So I just have this paint layer here on top. And all I'm doing in here, you can see, I'm just painting it off. Like it's essentially, I'm painting the color. So all I'm doing in this layer 1, I'm just making sure I'm painting in the roughness, and I'm changing my roughness value to be kind of 0. And then using some nice alpha mattes, I'm just painting across the surface to just get rid of the roughness. And if I visualize it, you will see that it's essentially just a cleanup. So I'm just painting over it like this, and using a nice alpha, you can actually get these nice streaks and make this look a little bit more interesting. You can also add like a little bit of patches here, so just to get the overall look and feel that it's actually a lot cleaner on that area, as if someone cleaned it with a cloth or so. And this is just what I did throughout, making sure the mirrors are clean and wherever. And then on top, I just added a dust layer, which should just collect something in the ridges. Nothing too crazy, but it just adds a minor detail towards the back here and towards the edges. All right, so now let's have a look at the car body. I think this is a very interesting material, and I'm quite proud of that because I think it turned out quite well and looks very realistic in terms of how metal behaves, especially this aluminum body here. So let's just hide all these layers and I'll show you how I set that up. As always, I'm starting out with our base materials, and this black plastic is just for the car body, for the bottom, just to make sure this is a fully black material. And then next up, we're already starting with our brushed metal look, and you can see we do have quite a few layers in here, but we will be going through them one by one, so nothing will surprise you. I will explain all the steps. So again, we are starting all the way at the bottom with the fill layer 2. And we are affecting all the channels. So if I just enable this, we already get somewhere quite far in the game. You will see though, we don't have these nice breakups on the edges, so this is quite straight. But again, we will be hiding these guys as well. And the initial thing I'm doing here, I'm just creating a color, and I'm creating a clouds preset material in here, and I'm just breaking up my initial metallic look. Next up, I'm creating a blur node here to just create these softer patches, because I wasn't able to do this with the clouds itself. I wanted to blur them up a little bit just to get these larger splotches. It shouldn't be too defined, too technical, right? So I blurred it up. So next up, we are adjusting even more. So I was not quite happy with the final result. So I used the A levels here to just dial in the blacks and the whites. So it's not fully black like this. I was fine tuning this because I just felt it was too contrasty. So I created this little levels. This fill layer here is responsible to adding a little bit of breakup. And again, I'm just affecting only the color. I'm using a metal aluminum texture, and I'm projecting this using a triplanar projection. You can see if I move this, I can move the pattern. And I just wanted to have this to get some kind of metallic look to it, or more like a manufactured look where you see some kind of dents or some rust collected, just some breakup. This is what I wanted to go for. And on top of that, I'm using a fill with a blending mode set to color, and I just want to kind of tint the base color to be a little bit more golden or bronze looking, because this is what the DeLorean kind of looked like in the references I had a look. If not, I just wanted to make it not super chromy white reflective. I wanted to give it some kind of nice color to it. And this is my basic metal setup. So next up, we're using a material finish, a brushed look. And you will find that in your project under, if you go to all libraries and you go to filters, you will see you have a few of these matte finishes. And I'm just using the brushed linear here. If I enable this, you will see we get these nice streaks on it. And I was playing around with the scale, the intensity, and the length. And you will see now we get these kind of elongated scratches all over. Unfortunately, the UVs on the car are not perfect. I was hoping they would be like this, and I didn't want to go into the trouble of rotating the UVs here. So you will see that the hood is going in one direction and the side of the body is going in the other. Ideally, everything should go in a straight fashion down the grain, right? Like down the vehicle. And this was the initial one. And then on top, I created this powder coated matte finish on top of that, which gives you this look of a very fine, flaky look. You still below that, you will still see my original brushed look, because I'm not applying this on 100%. I have a little bit of leeway here. If you go to the normal section, you will see this is only 70% active. So you will still see the underlying matte finish. And this is how I combine two different matte finishes, which is a nice way to adding more detail to it. So now we're coming to the more interesting things here, which will help to make this more realistic. And the large bump is responsible for that. In a nutshell, all it's doing, we are applying a height texture map onto this whole look of the whole car. So I'm just creating this 3D simplex noise, and I'm just applying this to the height channel. And you will see by just doing that, if I rotate my camera, you will see that the reflections are not moving over the body in a straight fashion. If I disable this, you will see that it's going linearly over, let's say, the car door. In real life, manufactured pieces are not perfect, and you will always see bump and dents all over the place. So that's why what I try to mimic here. It's a very subtle effect, but this will really make your models look more realistic. You can see on the hood as well that the reflections are not straight. You will definitely see it's going up and down. And sometimes it's too strong. You can go back to the height channel here and play it down. You can see the original height was dialed down to 20%. So this is 100% and I dialed it down. So it's not super strong, but you see it a little bit. And again, do not overdo this. And the last thing here, the fill layer 3, is what I feel makes it really realistic. So if I enable that, it explodes. I'm not sure. Is it because of the blur? Yeah, okay, because the blur wasn't enabled. Essentially what it's doing, if I don't display the blur, you will see that it's actually applying displacement map, and the displacement is derived from the height. That's why it looks super funky now. But technically what I'm doing here, I'm creating a fill layer, and I am filling the height using my curvature map. And the curvature map, if I find it here, looks like this. So I'm using the curvature as my height map, as my bump map. So whatever is white will be extruded, whatever is black will be pushed inside. Then I'm applying a levels on top. Let's just switch to our height map now so we actually can see what we're doing. So again, I applied the fill, and then I applied this levels height to just really crunch in the values. You will see that I'm really crunching them down, so we only have super strong whites and very black dark levels here. And on top of that, I'm just blurring it out a lot. And you will see this is now blurred quite a lot. If I disable this, you see the strong whites. If I don't have it, it's pretty much gone because I am blurring it so strongly. I can bring it back and you will see it comes back a little bit. You can see now the whites coming back. And the whole idea with this, is to create this illusion that wherever you have these connecting pieces or where the panels end in this region here, you will see that the reflection is going, it's like kind of slowly going up, and then you see the metal finish and then it's straight. And I can try to disable it. Maybe it's, yeah, you can actually see it quite clearly. It actually lifts these panels. It feels like they are pushed in or welded together, and it creates this nice illusion as if it's extruded in these areas. If I toggle back on and off again, you will see what's happening. And this is a very nice sheet. If you go to the normal maps, let's see if we actually go to the normal height mesh, you will see also in the normal maps that we get this kind of soft blurring around these edges. And again, this is exactly the effect I was going for, to create this illusion of a physical manufactured material. And then on top of everything, I just created a little dust layer, which is based strongly on occlusion. Wherever you have connecting pieces, you will just get a little bit darker outline. It just helps to make it more grounded, more solid looking. And again, if I visualize this whole thing now and zoom in, you will now see all the fine details I worked on this. So first of all, the tires, they have this nice polished look here with the clean, then obviously the cables. And you can clearly see that the reflection on the car body is now not moving linearly. It's nicely going over the body. And the back here, I didn't talk too much about this because I think this is mainly regular Substance Painter workflows. You apply some paint maps for this rust effect, then you create some grunge, rusty looks on certain areas. It's quite straightforward, the rest of the vehicle. And now let me show you the reference where it's all coming off of. So yeah, these are here my main references, and I was looking at these panels and I could clearly see that these edges are definitely broken up a little bit, and also the dust in the back here. The tires are these tires are way too clean. In my render or in my painter project, I definitely made them more dirty. But all in all, I think the same feel applies to the references here. And if we go back to this is now my result here. Obviously, we are missing lots of CG parts here, but I think overall the look and feel is very similar. Also, if you want to see this whole scene file, if you want to explore all the other materials, they are available on my Patreon. Make sure to support me over Patreon as well. The link for this project file here and all my other source files are in the link, in the description link below as well. So thanks again. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this workflow tutorial about Substance Painter and how I'm creating these more advanced looking effects using some nice techniques. Also, big thanks for Tourbox for sponsoring me this Tourbox NEO controller. Again, it's a great piece of hardware and I'll use it all the time next to my keyboard. It's very nice and very convenient to use. So thanks again, Tourbox, for sponsoring me with that hardware controller.